Did you know that a lot of us have possibly been duped into thinking that advancement of our species is about external technology and all the energy that has gone into external technology? You might be surprised to know that the most advanced species on this earth are all internally developed.
Welcome to the Universe Inside Our Mind. My name is Jubb, and this is Dr. David Jubb. Today we're going to be talking about vegetarianism and why it's important to become a vegetarian, especially right now at this time in the planet, and how, what about 1/3 of the Earth's population is already vegetarian, either for spiritual or ethical practices. So why should somebody become vegetarian if they're not already a vegetarian?
I guess for me, and perhaps for you at home that might be something else, but for me, the very first reason why I feel we should really become, I am a vegetarian or a frugivore, is because there's a great carnage that's occurring on the earth, and people are quite dissociated from this carnage that is occurring on the earth. And I come from the bush, basically. My family own a group of islands in between the mainland of Australia and Tasmania, and my father occasionally, he would say to me, here, go out there and pick a steer out, or go out there and pick a sheep out, or sometimes I was on the deck of the fishing boat and I would see this looking at me with eyes and this, and they all thought, oh well, one day he's going to be a fisherman. And I always thought to myself, oh my God, how could I be this? Because it always was gut-wrenching inside to me, the taking of the life of this other, and it was very not easy for me.
Right.
We should just simply know this, that there's no need for us to live this way. I have lived without this for many, many years now, Annie also, and I mean, I'm doing what I call not eating for a living. Maybe that might be something that the viewers at home might like to know more about.
So compassion. Compassion is a wonderful reason to become a vegetarian, right? Because we have a compassion for this other being and the life force inside of that being.
Well, I guess that probably the major reason why people perhaps there is a great carnage that's occurring on the earth at the moment is because people have been duped into thinking that they less than could live very healthily as a vegetarian.
So what's the truth of it? Is that true?
Yes, absolutely, it's damn true. Look at me. Actually, I don't know if you can see a little bit of muscle there, but I mean, you really don't need much. Actually, it's what you do with your body more.
And we've gone way beyond vegetarianism, actually, to become totally live food, right? And in fact, what you've done is even more extreme in the live food element by simply letting go of food altogether. Just a little bit of blended food sometimes, maybe a juice. That's about it, right?
Yes.
And you've built beautiful muscles, huh?
Right.
Your muscles keep getting larger.
I'm doing what I call not eating for a living. I've had the equivalent of about 4 or 5 glasses of juice over the last 4 days. That's what I've had.
Right. Interesting.
And that's typically what I'm having.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not drinking either, really, and I'm not eating either.
Right.
And this is moving into my 3rd year.
Excellent. And so what about the protein myth?
Everything that has a structure
Talk to me about protein.
Everything that has a structure has protein.
Mm-hmm.
This protein myth came about as a result of the meat and the dairy board wanting to say, hey, let's get this as the base. Sort of,
eat more flesh and milk. Right.
Yeah, got milk, all this sort of stuff.
Okay.
But let's be kind, let's be gentle where you are at home. That'll be good that's possible to be able to listen to what's said, keep your own thoughts about things, and let's be kind and let's be gentle. Let's live simply that others can simply live.
So now what is the story with the American? Okay, let's look at cattle, for example, cows and steers. Why is it that Europeans have boycotted the American cattle for so long? Why won't they eat the cattle that grows in this country?
Because they are concerned about the things being possibly injected into the meat, growth hormone and things like this. They are concerned possibly about carcasses of other animals being ground up into the feed. They are concerned
into vegetarian
that the
animals'
flesh
food
of these animals, basically the living conditions, that how the flesh is grown itself, possibly can be possibly detrimental to a person's health.
And so now what about antibiotics? Because I hear that they dose the cattle feed, especially at these feed farms and these fatting
Yes,
up the cow before they kill it.
because they take on more water.
They take on more water. But how does that affect the person who would have eaten that? Do they get the antibiotic hit?
It is amazing.
And what about that?
That's a good question, Annie. It is amazing that actually, did you know that mother's milk could not be sold on a shelf? When an animal has grazed and it's picked up a lot of this stuff and it ends up in its flesh, and then somebody came along and took some of its flesh, ate its flesh, they are consuming what has been a filter for an enormous amount of this stuff, which ends up having been deposited in a person's body in fat cells and things like this, basically. And so people have become resistant. There's epidemiological research that shows that there's all kinds of strains now which are thoroughly resistant to antibiotics, and that has risen enormously, and that antibiotics today are presently less than coping with certain sorts of microbes like enterococcus and things like this.
Right, so in fact, worldwide, people are, healthcare practitioners are alarmed because they have a strain of staph infection that's come out now in a couple of different areas and different places in the world that their antibiotics are completely useless against, and they've only just barely been able to control
various
it.
Kinds of streptococcus also creating cellulitis.
Because there's more and more hardy and virulent strains of these viruses.
They've genetically mutated to be able to exist within this niche, and often when the antibiotic is taken, these bacilluses can retreat into the debris of our cells where they are untouched basically by the plasma of our body, and there they transmutate into more virulent types of bacilluses which can exist without oxygen, and they excrete even more hideous types of toxins basically. So it's possible that when we bring something in that actually kills things, it's less than supporting of life.
Right.
The way to heal is to remember that we have a symbiotic relationship with the earth, and we have a symbiotic relationship with the things the organisms that's happening within inside us, and that we need to manage this in a way that's within a symbiosis rather than, otherwise it could have created a dysbiosis. But anyway, I know we need to get back to vegetarianism, and that I would love for us to talk about vegetarianism the most of the show. And I know it's not possible for us to cover everything, so probably we're going to whet people's appetites.
Right, so and just before we move on, let's wrap this piece by just saying, okay, so the antibiotics are fed to the cow, say, right? Now, is that for the cattle rancher feeds it to the cow for the cow, right? They say, oh, well, the cow might come in contact with some kind of virus. Let's dose him with antibiotics, which lowers the immune system of the cow a little bit, right? Quite a bit over a period of time. But that flesh that would have been consumed by a human then, she or he is also getting that dose of antibiotics. And then that's sort of what's tumbling down and finding that we need more and more antibiotics to fight more and more virulent strains. Like when penicillin first came in, it just took a little bit of penicillin and it just wiped out the viral load. Now it takes much, much more. And even then we're building tolerances. Okay, so that's very interesting. Back to vegetarianism now. What other benefits are there to benefit?
Well, it is estimated that in our children's lifetime, they would grow up to see more than half of all the present known life have become extinct unless we can consider what are the behaviours that can cause us to have more of a sustainable future. So we need to consider all of the resources that are presently have gone into flesh farming and eating flesh, and that we know that this is totally gluttonous, basically, because we really don't need to do that. We can have better health without this, and so it's a gluttonous behaviour that is causing the collapse, actually, of the ecology of the earth more than anything else.
And of the integrity of the health of the people. In this country, many people are dying of diseases that are actually caused by high consumptions of animal products, huh?
I would beg the viewers to consider the importance of the terrain of our body, the acid, alkaline, and how much free electrons we have to give. When we eat flesh, and when we eat cooked foods, and when we eat starch, it causes acids to be deposited in the body. And we talk about the internal terrain of the body, and that involves the acid-alkaline balance, meaning having spare electrons. It involves conductivity in the body, how much electrical activity that we have, and it involves the oxidization or fermentation. These three elements more or less relate to the terrain of our body, and things arise out of the substrate of this terrain. So when we poison the terrain, we're not really changing the terrain at all. You know, we actually are so changing the terrain, actually, we are changing in a way that creates a dysbiosis, typically. If the viewers are interested, you can pick up a physician's desk manual, like the Merrick Physician's Desk Manual, and right there you can look under most all the antibiotics, and you'll find that they are immunosuppressive, basically.
They suppress the immune system.
Yeah, but we need to get back to vegetarianism.
And vegetarianism. So acid-alkaline, how does it relate to vegetarianism?
The eating of the flesh, which has no fibre at all, hardly requires much hydrochloric acid, whereas hydrochloric acid really is required for breaking vegetable plant fibre down to release its minerals.
What is hydrochloric acid, quickly?
Hydrochloric acid basically is a substance which is an acid which causes the breaking down of the proteinaceous structure of food, so that the minerals and the amino acids can be, the food can be broken down to its smallest building blocks, basically.
So is it safe to say that it's the fortitude or the integrity of being able to break down food, it's the upper stomach, isn't it?
Yes, it is more than just the upper stomach. But getting back to flesh, having eaten flesh causes acids to be deposited in the body, and those acids change our terrain. That's one of the elements which really is causing aging. Those acids create free radical damage. Maybe you've heard about this. A free radical is a molecule, a group of atoms which is missing electrons sometimes, but not necessarily. It can be simply energetically deranged and needing to rob energy from somewhere else to stabilize itself. So when we eat flesh, it causes active oxygen and acids to be deposited in the body, and these have to be neutralized, and this compromises the terrain of the body quite considerably. So osteoporosis, which means little holes in your bones, that happens a lot as a result of alkaline elements like calcium and silica having to be drawn out of the bones, potassium to be drawn out of the muscles and things to help neutralize these acids, and that little by little causes the tissue of the body to have become more acidic, and it causes the plasma of our cells to have become more alkaline than what it should be. Flesh, eating of flesh, is a major demise in people's health at the present time. But not just the present time, period. I mean, this is demise happening right now on the earth because of flesh eating.
Yes, and it's happened for quite some time in different areas, especially the rich elite. I remember reading a wonderful piece that King Henry VIII actually died of scurvy. He was quoted as saying he only ate wild meats, right, just meats, and he says that vegetables were for peasants because they grew in the dirt, right? And he actually died of scurvy. He had all sorts of mental dementia and things going on.
Most of our leaders on the earth, they have puffy hands, they have puffy faces. I can tell that they really less than are able to really have all their forces and all their faculty. the faculty to inspire creative influence of the future involves good health and good and well-being. And many of our leaders are eating hamburgers and French fries and pizza, and they eat very gluttonously, and it ends up as a steaming bog, basically, inside. And that causes fog, you know, and all
Brain
sorts
fog,
of things,
right?
basically.
Interesting.
But we haven't talked about the resources on the Earth, which we can do when we come back.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we come back. This is The Universe Inside Our Mind with Annie and David Jubb. And if you'd like to catch us, you live in Manhattan, you want to come down and catch us every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. We do a live free lecture. You can come and catch us at 208 West 13th Street. That's in the West Village between 7th and 8th Avenue. And stay tuned because we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Universe Inside Our Mind. I'm Annie Jubb, and this is Dr. David Jubb. Today we're talking about vegetarianism and how you can help the Earth by becoming a vegetarian if you aren't already a vegetarian. So, what are some of the cool things that happen when one becomes a vegetarian?
People live longer, and certainly we have a sustainable future for the Earth, which we talked a little bit about in the beginning of this program. That's something I really would love for us to cover in this second segment. Really about actually the kind of energy and things that's going on that is required. Flesh farming versus vegetarianism versus flesh farming. If we just consider the calories, which is an energy unit that can raise the temperature of water 1 degree, more or less, that's called a calorie. So the amount of energy that it takes to bring about a kilocalorie from vegetarianism, it takes 2 kilocalories of fossil fuels to bring about 1 kilocalorie of energy from vegetarian foods. It takes 72 fossil fuel calories to get 1 kilocalorie of energy from flesh. So it's an enormous amount of energy which it costs for flesh farming, and in comparison vegetarianism is much less. And if we talk about water, it takes for a pound of produce from grapes to a pound, which is 70 gallons of water, to get a pound of produce from grapes, it takes 22 gallons of water to get a pound of produce from tomatoes. Most everything kind of really falls in vegetarianism. As far as water is concerned, it takes about between 22 gallons of water to get a pound of produce from tomatoes to 70 gallons of water to get a pound of produce from grapes. So all foods, vegetarian foods, fall into this amount of water, more or less, that's to get a pound of produce, between 22 gallons and 70 gallons of water. It takes 5,214 gallons of water on average to get 1 kilocalorie from flesh.
Wow.
That is, if the viewers at home could just imagine for a moment how much water this is for 1 pound of flesh, this is about the amount of water that the average Californian uses to shower for the whole year. That's 5 showers, that's 5-minute showers, 5 showers a week. That's how much water that adds up to get 1 pound of flesh. So it's enormous, the amount of water that we use to grow the flesh and all the water that grows the crops to feed the flesh. Something else which we could consider right now as far as resources are concerned is that Did you know that on the same acreage of land that you can grow thousands and thousands of pounds of vegetation and fruit, it's possible maybe to only raise a couple hundred poultry pounds of flesh on that same land? As far as I'm just sorting poultry, meaning a poor amount of flesh.
I see.
Because it takes an enormous amount of acreage of land to get 1 pound of flesh. Enormous. And on the same acreage of land we can grow thousands and thousands of pounds of fruit. A fruit tree can occupy only a small area of land, and it can produce enormous amount in pounds of food. So you could really say that our use of the earth is so very important that we start to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my grandfather, because my mother is Nepalese, and my grandfather would come, on my mother's side, would come to visit us on our family's islands. And I remember my grandfather getting us on his knee once, because they're vegetarian, and he said to me, he was rocking backward and forward, and I remember him drawing me inward with his eyes and everything, and he told me that there was a great carnage that was occurring on the earth, and that the fish in the seas were being fished out.
Which is true.
Yes, it is true.
More today than even then.
There was a great carnage that was occurring on the earth. And he told me this story. He said, years ago, he said the people of the Ganges River Basin were vegetarian, and that the people from the Caucasus Mountains arrived on the northern slopes of the Himalayas with their cattle and their grain. And the seers all saw this, and they said, these people need ever more land for their way of living, and that they are eventually going to encroach on our land, because after they used the land for the grazing, they completely would destroy the land quite a bit, and they would have to move to more land. And this is what happened with our pioneers. They would come, they would work a bit of land, and then nothing would come from that land much, and then people would die, and then the elder brother or the sister or the mother or the father or whoever was left would take the rest of the family, and they would move on to another plot of land, and then they would work this, and the same sort of thing would happen. And basically, our use of the earth with monocropping the soil for the flesh farming is where there was a variety of plants growing on the soil, growing minerals through biological transmutation. These minerals will be put back into the soil. When we monocrop the soil, it wipes all this diversity of minerals and things in the soil out. When we turn the soil over, when the soil is ploughed, the first 3 inches of the soil is where all the minerals are, so we plough this over, basically. When we cut the crop and it's left exposed, the soil is exposed without much holding it together through the winter, and the rain and the wind come and wash things. I mean, we've lost about 3/4 of our topsoil already in this country. I think it's actually 85% we've lost. It's more than 3/4.
Of the topsoil itself. That's so true. A couple of years ago, David, you and I were walking around in Illinois, wasn't it, with our friend Chris?
In the cornfield.
In the cornfield, and I had a stroll through these cornfields, and at first I was really enjoying it. Like I was running through the cornfields, and then I stopped still, and I noticed something very eerie about the whole thing. And I looked around, and I looked on the earth, and here were all these corn stalks that were really high, and I was right in the midst of it and stuff, and I realized what it was. There wasn't a single blade of grass anywhere in that field. There was just corn growing. And I just thought, what have they done to the earth here so that only corn will grow? And it was hundreds of miles of this kind of a thing.
They dump nitrates on the soil, which has got into everybody's water supply and poisoning the water supply, basically. You at home, you can help a great deal, all the creatures of the earth, by moving more toward vegetarianism. There's a great carnage that's occurring in the sea. There's a great carnage which is occurring on the earth. They say, Annie, that by the year 2030, at our present rate of topsoil depletion, that unless we would change our ways, that the last remaining 3 inches that we have would be gone at the present rate of topsoil depletion. It takes about 10,000 years or more to generate 1 inch of topsoil, basically. When the ice age comes and it grinds up everything, when volcanoes blast and they put a silt and things, they bring the minerals back onto the earth, which this is all part and parcel of the vital ecosystem of the earth, which at the moment our flesh farming habits, our flesh eating habits have really caused us less than to really have a sustainable future unless we can avert this.
Right, and isn't it true that the downfall of all great societies is topsoil erosion? Right? They run out of topsoil and then the whole structure
that is
collapses
kind of what
because
has happened.
That's the food, that's the system.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is true. The other thing, of course, I mean, talking about resources, I mean, we can come back to talking about the resources on the outside of ourselves, but
okay.
I just would like to say that, did you know that enzymes are very pH sensitive? Enzymes are very, very pH sensitive. That enzymes from plants have a very broad range, you know, which they can work within in a pH range. The enzymes, which are the proteinaceous material of the food, which has a biotic force, which through its harmonics and its resonance can disassemble and reassemble, and enzymes do all the work in our body. When we bring in vegetarian foods, the enzymes in vegetarian food have a very wide pH range that they can work with in the body. Flesh, you know, is very poor in comparison. Most people's pH range in their body has gone beyond the range which the enzymes can really work, coming from flesh, basically.
So eating flesh makes the body more acidic.
It makes the body more acidic. The enzymes then have a good range that they can work within. The flesh, by the way, which is one of the most detrimental things that occurs, is the flesh is broken down and it has to putrefy. So it putrefies in the intestinal tract,
in
right?
the body. And I heard somewhere that the average...
Putreficative bacteria.
Yeah.
And you should smell the feces of a person who is a vegetarian. This is a very sweet and fragrant in comparison to the flesh eaters.
The flesh eaters, which is putrefied. It's
indole, skatol, phenol, all kinds of extremely noxious gases that our hair is like little chimneys, basically, and gases come through our body and they come out of our hair and our scalp, and it's possible to smell somebody's scalp, and we can smell the kinds of things that's actually within us. So it's possible to really talk about actually, you know, the fragrance and things that's coming off us and be able to know about this. Our hair is like little chimneys and fragrance is like coming out of us and this sort of thing. Anyway, so there's much more that's possible for you to know, and that it really, we should do what we can to learn more about this, about becoming a vegetarian, so that we can have a sustainable future.
Become a vegetarian. And if you want to find out more about this, come and see us at 208 West 13th Street, where we have a live lecture in Manhattan every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And stay tuned for us and look for us on your cable stations, because we're going to be back all over the place, all over the country. And have a really, really healthful day.